had a hard time with numbers growing up, but words have always been my friend and solace, actually, for me. I think, my first memories of having a personal relationship with reading probably started with like Where the Red Fern Grows and Pope Joan. There were books that kind of led me to understanding that I wanted to put words on a page myself. And anytime I felt like retreating or sort of going somewhere else, it was easy to do so in a book. I remember the first book that I really, really fell in love with and that kind of made me understand that this was something that I'm never going to have enough time in my life for. Like that there is just a sort of bottomless, unending source that was available to me was through Steinbeck. I read Cannery Row and I was just like, okay, well, I'm going to read everything he's ever written because I just want to be with this person. I want to hear his voice in my dreams. Like I want, anyway, so that was my first obsession. And that was like probably beyond like all of the sort of little kid novels. The first time that I was like hungry, sort of insatiable. And I feel really lucky for that too. Like, I read the whole of East of Eden on a plane. Like I was going to Shanghai and it was a really long flight and I was claustrophobic on the plane. I was 16 or 17 and I had teenage anxiety. I think I got through 2/3 of East of Eden in a, 15-hour period because I just was like, if I just stay here, I'll be okay. And that's for me like the big book. That is he's one of my all-time favorites. Just a real hero. Somebody that I love so much. I feel like I know him. But that book is so foundational. And I also have like a strong connection to California. There's a chance my heart is in the shape of California. I didn't really know my grandfather. And so I had Steinbeck instead. I just learned so many lessons from that book and continue to. I've read that book out loud twice. And I've read it probably like 6 or 7 times to myself. I can't remember how I found Cannery Row. I guess maybe it was like kind of bolstered by a teacher that I had in the 6th grade. And I just never liked school until then, but she was like social studies and English. I think this kind of coincided with the time in my life that I started to become really obsessed with reading and not just sort of my own journals, but actually really engaging with authors and stuff. I think she has a lot to do with that. I was a freshman in high school. I read On the Road, and I also had a meeting with the director that was going to adapt the novel. And it's funny, I look back on my relationship with On the Road and how I held these men in such high esteem because they just lived life to the fullest. And I love On the Road, and I love all of the avenues that it took me down and all the different writers that it has led me to. And I loved making that. I loved working on that movie with that group of people. And as I get older, I think that what I'm really obsessed with is their sort of repossession of form. Their lifestyles were like wild and crazy, and they like, ran around a lot and were reckless and sort of constantly chasing the it of it all. Sort of just hungry, sort of voracious people. I always was really inspired by that. But as a grown-up person, I think that what I was really attracted to was somebody taking a sentence and just deconstructing it, turning it inside out, making it theirs, making it physical. It's such a rhythmic book, and that whole kind of area in literature is it has an instinct and a quick-footed sort of inclination. And I think that most things that are exceptionally true are impulsive, or at least it makes sense that that's where I started. So I just read Saint Joan of Arc by Vida, and I've never read anything else by her. I just bought everything she's ever written. I'm so intrigued by this person. There's a sort of pragmatism to her writing, but sort of an awareness of the small and tender things in a way that feels very protected. I think that she is somebody that, and I could be wrong, I need to sort of learn more about this person. I'm so curious about her, but she seems protective of her intellect, very proud of it, and it seems like it's being broadcast. It just makes sense considering, I think she was writing in like the 20s, and it wasn't like the easiest time comparatively. It's hard to generalize, but for a woman at that time having a voice and having it be so loud, it just feels like this undeniable force. And when I read the biography, I had been inspired to read Saint Joan of Arc by a book called The Chronology of Water. And Lydia Yuknovich, who wrote that book, it's a memoir. She talks about a lot of the books in her life, this being a really, really seminal and foundational, formative experience, reading this thing. And I just can't really believe that it happened. There is something about believing in something so much, so hard, and sort of just making mountains move and making men change. There are a few lines in it that are so striking. There's one about that she changed the minds of men, or if they couldn't change her mind, then they would destroy her body. It moved me to the core. And you could have written that story in so many different ways, and the way she decided to talk about her was so cool. It just said so much more. It was so much more than historical fiction to me. All we do is make up stories. That's how we live. That's how we survive. That's how we make it through. Everyone's narrative is different. And so for her to impose hers with the strength that she did, I just can't believe the power that she had is just like, it's miraculous. It feels like an absolute miracle. And it also feels like insanity, which sometimes, obviously, it's really hard to tell the difference between those two things. We were just talking about some people being from another place. Tilda, Bowie, Didion, they're like alien people. I feel like when I read anything that Joan has written, that I'm getting a skewed sort of sideways glance at things that I usually just see straight on, and somehow she's always able to help you kind of step to the right or left and see it from an odd angle, and then really just shed new light on things that feel normal to me. It's like she has a almost sinister take on things that feel kind of unanimously accepted, and she's always able to sort of remind you of things like that. I don't know. I think even just her physicality beyond the words, you look at that person and you just imagine what it would be like to live in there. That voice, that particular voice, there is no one like her. I don't feel like any of it is even close to derivative. Everything feels original. All of it feels like thought bubbles from another planet. I love that person so much. And I love her kind of obsession with flow, process, how things work. I'm kind of an immediate, very present, really kind of to a fault, momentary person. And, you know, our strengths are our weaknesses and our weaknesses can be our strengths. And so that's like cool for me. But I love how she will dissect, you know, the Hoover Dam. How does it work? All that power, keeping all that power in, like just her sort of like her being taken with how freeways work, stuff like that. I'm like, I would never think like that. And then making it somehow really personal and making it almost like, you know, she's writing about freeways, but she's writing about us. She's writing about people all the time. And when he articulates that, you just go, it's okay because you made all of these paintings and we do share it with you. But it's like this frustration of not being able to externalize something that is inside of you that feels really urgent and kind of scary. And there's just a tenderness to it, to those letters that I find really, really, really endearing. I think my kind of obsession with like autobiographical stuff, most writers when they talk about writing, or at least like, I guess the sort of conversation that I'm thinking of now is that classically it's like, oh, you write what you know, or, you know, I've just heard a lot of people voice frustration and being like, yeah, but you can make stuff up too, and that can still be your story. And I do find that every single time I get obsessed with one writer and you read sort of a slew of their books, and if you read them in order, they all feel like there's like a through line. Like I'm obsessed with Lydia Yuknovich. I'm really obsessed with her memoir.